products are safe wherever it is you are in town. For the innovator, Brian George Otieno, KTN News.
Now, the aviation industry is poised to recover in 2024, according to the International Air Travel Association, ITA. Now, despite flights slowly resuming in many parts of the world, majority of airlines are still counting losses. Experts hold that airlines will struggle longer before passengers can feel safe to fly as the globe battles the coronavirus pandemic. Total revenue lost since March stand at $419 billion and counting. We had an exclusive interview with Hiran Pereira, the Senior Vice President in charge of cargo planning at Emirates, and says it's not all gloom and gloom. Hiram, this is actually the interview of Hiran.
Just give us a sense of how things have panned out.
Right, so it has been, yes, a challenging time for everyone, for the world, for the country and for the airline. I think in this pandemic, probably the airline industry, the travel industry, I think has been impacted, I would say, the most. So, yeah, it has been quite a challenge. But I would like to think that we've also been able to respond to that quite well. So if I look back to March, when initially it was in March that many borders started closing down, and gradually our network had to kind of phase down, and by the end of March, virtually our entire passenger network had to stop. So of course that was a big challenge for the company. But of course, freight demand still existed. Our freighters continued to operate, around the world as they were doing. And then when, of course, our operation is also, it's not just the freighters. The freighters also contribute and distribute load using the passenger belly network. So when the passenger belly network was lost, not only to us, to all the airlines, markets around the world were starved of cargo capacity because goods needed still to be moved. And in the early days of the pandemic, there was a huge demand for moving PPE, all these masks, gowns, everything that was required for not only for the people, but also for the first responders, first line medical workers. So what we quickly did was to use our passenger aircraft just to carry cargo. So we created a network, first regionally, and then we expanded that globally.
Talk to us, how did this transition happen, moving the passenger aircrafts to also handle cargo?
Right, so I think we are fortunate that we have a large fleet of Boeing 777-300ERs, which is probably the most cargo-friendly passenger airplane. So we pressed those into service across the network. It was, of course, it was kind of learn as you go. We are very fortunate that we have a great team that work not just within cargo but the entire airline. It's amazing how everyone pulled together, other departments, people across our network around the world, how everyone pulled together as one team under these challenging circumstances, working day and night, and working remotely. People at that time, in the early days of the pandemic, all of us were working from our homes. And people worked continuously to put all these together. So we made up our network as we went on. There was no time to do research or how you would normally launch routes. But it was based on demand, based on the market feedback.
Sir, help me also understand in terms of the impact on the business. Of course, IATA report shows that most of the airlines will experience a lot of fall in their numbers and their profitability. Of course, this has been linked to low travel, the travel bans that were imposed. And for you as an airline, do you see business bouncing back? How fast? And what are your projections?
So yes, the loss of the passenger revenues, passenger travel was a huge hit to the airline. That was a big dent, and that was that was like across the world for everyone. We did manage to move a lot of cargo, but that, if I look at the overall revenue that the company needs, that is still a small percentage of what is needed. So yes, overall the loss of the passenger travel is a hit to the airline, and it is impacting, of course, the bottom line of the airline. Going forward, we believe that once there is a vaccine that comes about, passenger travel will come back and it will bounce back, because there is a lot of pent-up demand for travel. And that will come about. Right now, a lot of people don't want to travel. People haven't been traveling for the last 8 months. I think it might be some more months before governments and countries open their borders. But once that happens, you would see that there is a demand for travel. But in between, we've also expanded or reintroduced our passenger network. And today we fly to nearly 80 or 90 destinations providing passenger services. So while in March the passenger services stopped, then from around June onwards we started restarting the passenger network, and now we are to about 90. Not at the same level of frequency we had previously, but we have quite a large footprint across the globe in terms of the destinations we serve.
Sky Cargo is a key pillar for Emirates, and looking at the way the business is segmented, the cargo business contributes over 40% of revenue to the overall group. And what is the silver lining, even as the pandemic subsides? Do we foresee cargo business to expand? Is it a priority now for the airline to consider diversifying? Because some of the lessons, of course, from COVID has been you cannot put all your eggs in one basket.
Right. So I would say that from an early age, or from our beginnings, for Emirates as a company, cargo was important. That's why all the aircraft that we ordered were always wide-bodied, although regionally we could have used narrow-bodied airplanes because of the importance of cargo. So cargo has been important, and going forward I think it will be even more so, not just for us, but I think globally, because the loss of belly capacity has also, I think, woken up the industry to say that cargo cannot be just a byproduct of passenger carriage. It has to be handled in its own merits, and it has to have its own investment as an industry, so that over a period of time, when things normalize, that cargo capacity and global trade can take place without all these kind of spikes or shocks to the system. What we've seen today or over the last 6-8 months is a shock to the global logistics industry. Now that kind of shock, we should, in the years to come, we should, as an industry, we should look at how do we avoid those kind of shocks, because it impacts trade ultimately, and it ultimately impacts the consumer. So I believe the industry will come together to make sure that these kind of shocks are minimized. I won't say that we can eliminate them 100%, but how do we minimize this kind of shock?
All right. And still looking at the future projections, talk to us about a strategic view for Africa, looking at a market that continues to become an emerging market.
Right. So Africa has been an important emerging market for us over the, pre-COVID, and we strongly believe that post-COVID it will, because the fundamentals are in place, and we believe it will be a very important region, and we would of course ensure we provide the greatest efforts to provide that continent the capacity that it needs, look at the emerging opportunities and see how we as an airline could participate and also help in the trade that takes place between Africa and the rest of the world.
Time for some international news, and this week in the US it is all about the election. How many people will turn out to vote? How soon will the results be known? And ultimately,